Good afternoon. I'm Willy Shih, and I teach at the Harvard Business School. I would like to add my welcome to you at the 17th Annual State of Manufacturing Survey Release event. I've known Bob Kill for 3 decades now, and he and I both share a deep interest and belief in the importance of manufacturing and its link to innovation. I pay a lot of attention to what's going on in places like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Indiana, Kentucky, the Midwest, where I grew up. So when he asked me to speak with you, my first thought was, of course, I'd love to, but I told Bob I have classes at this time of year, so it's hard for me to travel on class days. So he suggested I make this video, and I hope this will be an okay substitute. Many people on the coast, and especially in Washington, talk about manufacturing and bringing manufacturing back to these shores. But the real action is in places like yours where the work is actually getting done, places like here. So it's a pleasure and an honor to talk with you today. You're going to see the survey results shortly. I think you will find them to be pretty interesting. But before that, let me share what I've been thinking about. These are challenging times. Challenging because a lot of things are changing. And those changes are sometimes pretty sudden, and I don't have to tell you the timing is often hard to predict. Let me make that impossible to predict. In fact, I'm recording this video just a few days before this meeting you are attending now, and my guess is that some parts of it could be obsolete by the time you see it. For example, the Supreme Court is hearing a case today on the legality of the IEEPA tariffs, so who knows what tomorrow will bring. Depending on who prevails in that case, a lot could change by tomorrow. The rapid changes in tariffs have really impacted the global trading environment, though I should say that while the U.S. historically has been the largest single trading partner for most countries, we only participate in about 15% of overall global trade. The other 85% is between and among countries other than us. We shouldn't forget that. So while trading with American companies and supplying goods to the American consumer is getting more expensive, we should also be looking at secondary impacts if we want to understand how they affect us here in the U.S. The first of those is the diversification of sourcing, which has been driven by many American importers, but is starting to take hold more broadly. This really started before the pandemic, but the pandemic threw this into overdrive when we suddenly recognized how dependent we as a country were on China for so many products, components, and even metals and critical minerals, and how vulnerable that could make us. There's certainly been a lot of action in that area in the last week. This vulnerability has manifested itself in China Plus One strategies, which means I might continue producing in China, but I'm going to have an alternate source of supply. This has resulted in a lot of production moving to Southeast Asia, especially Vietnam, and also Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and Cambodia, although the latter two are still really hard work. On a positive note, that means some sourcing has come back to the U.S. If there is a company here that can do the work, because people are more willing to deal with the cost disadvantage in exchange for some more resilience and being close to the market, that's great. Tariffs help that, obviously, but we shouldn't forget that it's just like hot money that moves around, and that business can leave as readily and as quickly as it showed up. The second shift, which we don't feel as much in this country, but will affect our exports in a big way, is that as we make it harder for China to export to the U.S., the tremendous manufacturing overcapacity in Chinese industry is flooding into other markets around the world. For a while, it has been flooding into Europe, and it still is, but they're starting to clamp down over there too, because they don't want their home market manufacturers wiped out either. So that stuff is going to Southeast Asia and the global South. I've been to Africa twice in the last 4 months, and Chinese imports, appliances, consumer goods, cars, steel, aluminum, telecom equipment, trucks big and small, buses, industrial goods, are all flooding in. That has implications for their local economies, of course, But I was talking to a former student and large investor in East and West Africa, and he said, as an American, it pains him, but he's telling his companies and partners to buy Chinese because the costs are half or less what the American products cost. That's the third thing, the loss of competitiveness of American exports. Now, the core problem here is that input costs here are rising, whether it's steel, aluminum, and copper, precision equipment, or imported components in many, many commodities. Or maybe it's the higher costs for warehousing and holding all those intermediate goods inventories that importers tried to front run before the tariffs took hold. Or the cost of trucks or the effects of the weaker dollar. I saw in Indiana imports in January and February of this year were double the previous record and jumped to 4 times the previous record in March. Across the U.S., March 2025 imports of all goods were highest on record. Capital goods, highest on record. Consumer goods, highest on record. Imports from Mexico were highest on record. Imports from the UK were highest on record. Ireland, Germany, Italy, all of these were highest on record. Imports from India and Vietnam were highest on record as well. And by the way, imports from China were the lowest since the start of the pandemic in March 2020. Now, what that means is that people brought in a lot of inventory, and it takes time to burn through all those inventories. And as we do that and restock at higher costs, those costs are going to get passed along. So even though there might be certain days when tariffs go into effect, like earlier this year, the impact gets spread out depending on when a particular supplier has to replenish. I talked to one manufacturer at the beginning of April and asked him how much product had he brought in. He said they were good until Christmas, but they had to rent parking lots and fill them with 53-foot trailers stuffed with merchandise. But if you look at the pricing of their products, it's gone up dramatically at retail. And in their case, what used to cost $22 at the store now sells for $38 at retail. What used to sell for $33 now sells for $57. Now, if you're a manufacturer and you're importing components like magnets or small motors or fasteners or extrusions, you've probably seen some of this stuff. The other thing I realized when I was doing price comparisons is that a lot of things like tools, we don't buy them every week or with any regularity. So it's not like when you go to the supermarket and you're buying shrimp, which thanks to the 50% tariff on India, where we get a lot of our shrimp in this country, we feel the pain pretty quickly. Or it's not like energy prices, but it's this time lag on cost increases that eventually pass through the system. It's kind of like boiling the frog by raising the temperature gradually. It's easy to not pay attention as the temperature rises. Eventually we're cooked. So my message to you and to everyone manufacturing in the U.S. is we have to keep working on productivity. Face it, we are a high-cost country, so anything with a lot of labor content in it, we've got to get high productivity to compensate for it, whether it's through automation, using data and AI, or my favorite play, plain old hard work of getting your lean manufacturing right with continuous improvement and frontline problem solving, getting down to single-piece flows rather than large batches, eliminate waste, but get the basics right and then bring in your AI or whatever, or your automation. You know, I visited a Toyota factory last year, and you would think they had gotten all this down, but they were working on improving their operations every single day. I mean, every day. They were trying to build in more and more flexibility and resilience into what I saw was already an outstanding operation. As I walked around the plant floor with the plant manager, I asked him, it's like, you're building sedans, and the Detroit guys have given up on building sedans, but you're using American labor. Your parts are mostly made in Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, and you're using American-made steel. I was trying to get the price he paid for steel out of him, but he wasn't going to tell me, of course. He just said, we have a strategic relationship with our suppliers. But they were rebuilding one of their 2 main assembly facilities, building in more flexibility because they knew they couldn't predict the order mix that well. And they were not satisfied with what they had, and they probably will never be. Okay, and these guys are among the best manufacturers out there, and they're working hard every day to improve the efficiency and productivity of their operations. I think all of us could benefit from a little of that. We're a high-cost country, so productivity is going to be the key to manufacturing staying alive and thriving here. Availability of labor and the ability to retain labor and skills will continue to be a big challenge. I don't have any magic bullets here other than being productive and being competitive has a way of buying you a lot of headroom to invest in and develop your team. The government can help us too, whether it's federal or state or local, by making our lives simpler. I'm quite confident I don't need to tell you that means less regulation. Or I would frame that as better regulations that recognize the reality of the challenges we face in business every day. I can hear the groans from you 1,000 miles away, by the way. Now, I've worked with folks in Washington for the past several administrations now, not so much the current Trump administration, though I've tried, but I did try to help during Trump 1 and the administrations of Biden and Obama. What I've come to appreciate is that government people are pretty far removed from what you do and what you face every day, whether they're elected officials, appointed, or career civil servants, because they work on different stuff. They don't have to worry about not being able to start a shift because too many people didn't show up. And until recently, it's probably still the case, they never had to make a payroll or worry about not getting paid or collecting accounts receivable. That means you have to educate them. That's what I try to do every chance you get and at all levels. That means getting in front of government people, whether elected or appointed or career civil servants, and educating them on the challenges facing you. If you can do that collectively through trade organizations, that's one path. But you might be surprised how little they know about actually running a factory or business. Longer term, I think the real question is how will we maintain competitiveness in a global environment? So productivity and building resilience, that'll serve you well. Thanks for hearing me out, and I want to wish you all the best and enjoy the rest of this conference. Thank you.